Hello, ghouls and gals. The day has finally dawned. After dealing with the easier, less controversial parts of the end times, we're truly entering the muck now as we go over one faction that pretty much everyone grew to hate in the last war for the old world, the Skaven. That's not to say the rats are always getting hate, mind you. A lot of people, including myself, consider them one of the best factions in Warhammer Fantasy, but when it comes to their end times usage, well, they're little more than a plot device. Destroying huge chunks of land just because they have untold numbers has us wondering why the Horned Rat never told them to pull their fingers out of their smelly rat behinds so long ago. It feels like they are truly the unstoppable force in a story that's meant to be about Archaon's ascendancy. Hopefully, we're going to change that as we take a crack at rewriting the end times, specifically rewriting the Skaven. I'm hoping by this point you've caught one or two of my other videos of this rewrite, because for the Skaven we're not going all the way back to when the twin-tailed comet first appeared and the line between the Chaos Realms and the Mortal Plane became blurred. Instead, we're picking up a fair few years into the timeline, when the Lizards had managed to repel the Skaven assault on Lustria by obliterating most of Clan Pestilence and Clan Scryer by throwing the Warpstone Moon back at them. Until this point, the Skaven had pretty much been ticking on business as usual. They don't really care about the Chaos Invasion causing havoc in Kislev, and are just focused on dealing with each other and their usual enemies in the Dwarves and Greenskins. Once they hear word of the destruction that happened in Lustria, the Council of 13 convene in Skavenblight. Most are looking to scavenge what land and slaves they can from the depleted clans, but as the great mortal lords of the Skaven continue to do as they have done for the entire history of Warhammer, they are visited by a higher power. The Horned Rat himself enters the council chamber, and he is not pleased with his subjects, to say the least. How can they bicker at a time like this? How can they not see that the greatest victory of all can be won above ground if they just put their petty squabbles to one side? Beyond the Under Empire, chaos is rising, and it will win-win, according to the Horned Rat. This is the last chance for him to ascend, for all of Skavendom to prove they are as strong as the Chaos Warriors, and that the Horned Rat deserves to be considered on a level with Nurgle, Khorne, Slaanesh and Tzeentch. Whether he does deserve that is up to you, but the Horned Rat clearly has the ambition. The Horned Rat orders the Skaven to unite, and any that will not do so will die by the hands of his vermin lords. Those that prove themselves worthy will be assisted by the demonic rats as well. Emboldened by the word of their god, the Skaven decide to pour forth in their huge numbers from the ground. They take Tilia in a massive assault known as the Night of 1000 Terrors. Clan Eshin assassins take out anyone who could hope to lead a defence of the country, and the rats make a base of operations in the Southlands. They also raid good chunks of Estalia, Araby and the Border Princes, but they don't manage to utterly destroy those countries as they do in the canon end times. Again, with a lack of Clan Scryer and Clan Pestilence, the Skaven are mostly using brute force combined with assassinations from Eshin to win the day. They lose thousands in these assaults, but united the Skaven have plenty more to fill their ranks. So long as they know they have the Horned Rat at their side, they're not going to rout easily. As much of the Southlands becomes infested by rats, the Skaven move to lend their blades to Chaos. If the Horned Rat is to become an equal to the Chaos Gods, he must prove himself a worthy ally to them. Thanquol is the Skaven's chosen emissary, just as in the canon version of the End Times, but he's not as successful in negotiating an alliance with Archaon. After leaving Kislev a shadow of its former self, Archaon is high on victory and sees little reason to stoop so low as to allow rats to join his legions. He has the Beastmen to scout the nearby lands in their thousands, and he has the Chaos Dwarves coming down to supply his troops with great siege weapons and defences. To Archaon, there is no need for the Skaven to be at his side, yet he also understands their numbers and that they would be an irritating enemy to deal with if left alone. Therefore, he tells them that they will not be allies. Not yet, at least. There are still many enemies of chaos in faraway lands, and it must be assured they will not interrupt Archaon's plans. Here, the Everchosen is essentially telling the Skaven to get lost without creating another enemy for himself. If he can have the rats play distraction, he deals with both them and another foe, while he can take on the Empire uninterrupted. It's nothing genius, but because Thanquol wishes to please the Horned Rat, he takes any terms he can to keep Chaos on side. The Skaven first try to take Nuln, thinking they can offer a two-pronged approach for Chaos. As Archaon comes from the north and they attack from the south, the Skaven throw all their might at the province. The battles are hard fought on both sides, with the streets of Nuln growing thick with powder smoke and Skaven bodies. Unlike in the original End Times, it's worth remembering that Altdorf hasn't been besieged here, so the Empire is much more organised and manages to push the Skaven invasion back for now. Nuln is heavily damaged, as are much of its forges, but it is a hold, something that leads the Skaven to look elsewhere for their great victory. Thinking of faraway lands, the Skaven decide to head to Cathay. If there is a force of order capable of matching Chaos in strength at this point, it is the forces of the East. They have dragons, cannons, and plenty of manpower. As most of the Chaos forces have been tackling with Kislev, and the demons have been purging Lustria, Cathay hasn't been touched by the forces of the Dark Gods. Sadly, it has been dealing with another great enemy of mankind, and therefore it hasn't been able to help. One that is nearly as numerous and as widespread as the Skaven. An enormous green tide is ravaging Cathay. When the Skaven armies arrive, they find that there are great battles taking place everywhere, and at first it seems they've struck gold. They can just waltz in there, take on whoever's left standing, and either deal with the Orcs or Cathay in one swoop without having to expend much in terms of their own resources. However, it appears that the Skaven have accidentally played themselves when they enter this conflict. When the Dragon Emperor of Cathay gets word of the tides of Skaven attacking his lands as well, he comes up with a scheme to get both their enemies gone in one move. He makes a personal appearance at the next great battle with the Greenskins, but before he can meet Grimgor's horde in battle, the Dragon Emperor stoops to one knee. It pains his pride and his people to do this, but it is to save them. The Dragon Emperor tells Grimgor that he has won. He has seen the might of the Greenskins and he knows that his people will not survive fighting them, so he will fight no more. A cry of victory echoes throughout the Greenskin lines, but Grimgor is furious. Greenskins love nothing more than to fight, and have a good fight at that. Even as Grimgor voices his disdain for the surrender, the Dragon Emperor repeats that he will not fight, especially not with two enemies of equal strength at his doors. How can he struggle against the Greenskins when the mighty Skaven also slaughter his people? The Dragon Emperor's work is then done. By the next day, the Skaven lines come under the hefty assault of enraged Greenskins. Grimgor cuts down thousands of rats by himself, and even though the rats may have won in a war of attrition, to prevent the morale of their troops from breaking entirely, they decide that they must pull away from Cathay. Sensing a greater fight to the west, the Greenskins head that way, abandoning their fight against the Skaven, but we'll save that story for another day. The defeat at Cathay forces the Skaven to start bickering again. Each clan blames the other for the lack of progress that they've made. This was meant to be this great Skaven unification, the chance to show the world that they have the numbers and ambition to rule it, and yet despite their early victories in the Southlands, they have not yet been able to prove their strength. Yet, just as the Council of 13 are about to forget what the Hornrat told them and go back to their bickering, they are informed of a great victory. The Head Taker has won the Eight Peaks. Queek returns to Skavenblight, but his head is low. He does not show the satisfaction of victory, as he reveals that no one really won the Eight Peaks. The dwarves were all dead, but Queek did not take Belagar's head. He was assisted by a wounded Ikit Claw, who gifted Queek a bomb large enough to blow the mountains to pieces. Most of the Greenskins were killed too, but Skarsnik wasn't seen amongst the dead. With this devastating blow to the dwarves having been dealt, the Vermin King appears before the quabbling Skaven and tells them one of their oldest foes are at their breaking point. The dwarves are few in number, and they hide within their walls, too scared to show their pride. In the south, the risen dead are already besieging Karak-Azul, and wiping out the dwarves now will be as simple as huffing powdered warpstone. And so, the Skaven get to work. They use their expertise with underground tunnels to block off the dwarven holds from one another, and use their numbers to besiege as many of them as they can. With Ikit back on the scene, Clan Skryre can restore itself to somewhat of its former glory, providing siege weaponry for the Skaven armies, while the monster pens of Hell's Pit are empty to give the Skaven a united army the likes of which the world has never seen before. They pool the majority of their strength outside the dwarven capital of Karaz-a-Karak. The Skaven believe that if they cut the head from the Dwarven Empire, the body will soon fall after. That's how they'd react, at least. Even as the Skaven poison the hold's water supplies and send assassins to spoil the food storages, the siege is a lengthy one. Thorgrim Grudgebearer holds out with all he can, batting off each wave the rats throw at him until they can clamber up the walls on the bodies of their kin. With each dwarf that falls, though, the chances of survival lessen. Thorgrim knows this, and he also knows that no help is coming. He should have listened to Teclis. He should have shrugged off his stubbornness for once in his life and rode out to aid humanity in its darkest hour. The dwarves might not have had the strength to face the Everchosen alone, but it would have been a more fitting end than dying slowly to the Ratmen. We'll get more into Thorgrim's psyche in the Dwarves video, but essentially all you need to know is that Thorgrim doesn't give up here. He can't. There are still thousands of dwarves that can fight, that deserve to live even if they'll have to find a new home. He rallies his most loyal troops and has the rest of the dwarves form a caravan. The Grudgebearer says he will distract the Skaven while the rest of them make their escape and inform the other dwarven holds to push out as well. Against hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Skaven, Thorgrim Grudgebearer makes his final charge. The gates of Karaz-a-Karak open wide, as in the original End Times, and a stream of gold follows as the dwarves show that they will not lose their pride even if they lose their lives. Most of the Skaven instantly rush at this small elite force, yet few of them make it within 100 feet of Thorgrim thanks to cannon and thunderer fire from the walls. The Vermin Lords are suspicious though, and when they spot the caravan heading out of Karaz-a-Karak, they order the Skaven to go there instead. Queek Headtaker, egotistical maniac that he is, defies the Vermin Lords. If he can't have Belegar's head, he'll take Thorgrim's as a consolation prize. This leads to the Skaven being split, following the mortal and demonic leadership of their army. The dwarves take advantage of this division, and though many fall, Thorgrim defeats Queek easily in melee, forcing the rest of the army, and even the Vermin Lords, to take notice of him. When one of the Horn Rats chosen falls to Thorgrim, most of the Skaven begin to rout. It even seems like for a moment that the dwarves wouldn't even need their king to sacrifice himself. And yet, just as he raises his axe in victory, Deathmaster's snitch lops it off, along with Thorgrim's head. Empowered by another Vermin Lord, the Deathmaster disappears just as soon as he appeared, leaving the remainder of Thorgrim's troops as fresh pickings for the rats. Having seemingly defeated the dwarves and ransacking their capital, the Skaven return to Archaon via Thanquol, who once more kneels before the Everchosen, this time in Middenheim. Archaon isn't pleased with the Skaven's actions though. He's furious with them. By killing Thorgrim, by forcing the dwarves to flee or die, they have made the Dowie more united than ever. Led by Ungrim Ironfist, a huge army of dwarves is now heading from the World's Edge Mountains to bring the fight to chaos. Instead of eliminating one foe, the Skaven have made them even more imposing. Archaon kills Thanquol for his failures and shuns the Skaven. Of course, this leads to more squabbling, but the Horned Rat is most furious of all. Instead of directing that anger at his people though, he directs it at chaos. He will no longer become an equal of the Chaos Gods, he decides. He will become their superior. The Horned Rat decrees that the Skaven still have the numbers to rule this world, and therefore going forward, they shall have no alliances, only enemies. And there you have it. Apologies if this one is a little more jumbled, but I couldn't really get a central character to base the Skaven narrative around, as they just are so numerous and in so many places at once. I don't know who will be going over next, probably either Nagash or the dwarves. So as always, stay tuned and let me know what you thought of this little rewrite.